Hello, beautiful community. Welcome back to the Divine Feminine Healers podcast. I've been so excited to have our guest, Jenny, who is a psychologist and relationship coach, on the podcast today. I've been following her for Instagram for a while, and I'm so excited to dive into this conversation. And I'm honored that you're here, Jenny.
Likewise, Angelica, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so excited to chat with you today and dive right into it.
Yeah, so we're going to go right into it. The question that I always ask all my guests, because I think the divine feminine really expresses herself so uniquely in each person, is how does the divine feminine express herself within you?
Oh, I love that question, first of all. And second of all, there's so many beautiful ways to connect to your divine feminine energy. For me, really, I learned that there is such a beautiful approach in going to a mind body idea of really connecting with your emotions, really connecting with your mind, and connecting with your body to the divine feminine. So for me, I love finding a routine that works for me where I really include all aspects. So I love dance. I love finding a way to have a playlist that really suits my mood. And I get into dancing. I get into really connecting with my body, seeing how it feels, really being present and mindful with my movement and touch as well. So I love doing that. I really love connecting through breath work as well. And it helps me to really get into the energetic state where, first of all, again, I love working on mindfulness. So connecting with myself to mindful breath and seeing what is it that my body needs? How can I nurture myself? So that's part of my favorite part of my routine, to see what parts of myself do I want to nurture today. And that's basically so the essence and a big part of tapping into your divine feminine is seeing how can I nurture myself? How can I take care of myself? How can I not only be in, as we know, the masculine, which is so, praised in society, and we're doing and we're organized and we're structured, but also how can I be receiving today? How can I nurture myself? How can I honor my cycle? I love working with my cycle. So really just listening to those parts of my body and especially honoring my intuition are my favorite things. And also journaling. I love journaling. I love seeing what comes up for me if I just um, wish away, saying if everything was fine today and I don't have to do something or list something or be in a doing energy, what is it that I would do today? So that really helps me to connect with myself and my divine feminine.
I love all of those so much. I grew up as a dancer. My audience knows, so I love dancing. It's so healing, and I love how you gave these practices of tapping into the body. I think that's so important, and there is this kind of new wave of tapping back into somatic healing and feeling back into the physical body and that like juicy vivaciousness. That intuition isn't just only the spirituality part, which I love, but it is what is the wisdom that's coming out through your body. It's so important.
I agree. Yeah, and as I said, that's so important because I work as a psychologist, as a relationship coach, but I also work a lot with women learning to listen to their cycle, honoring their cycle, and listening to their intuition. So, and what I've noticed throughout my work is really if you only do one part of the work, it catches up with you, right? So that's you only do mindset work but you don't feed your body with the things it needs or honors what's going on or see where there's stored trauma or emotions going on, that creates challenges. And the same way around, if you only eat healthy and do if you only eat healthy and indulge in dance or embodiment practices, but never have to sit down what caused trauma and how you can overcome it, it will cause problems as well.
Yeah, for sure. I love the idea of rhythms and cycles too. Again, I talk about this all the time because in Ayurveda, it's really aligning yourself with nature. And I just posted about, we can align our moon cycles because as women, we are more in touch with the moon, which represents the mind and the emotions and the divine feminine, that we can link like our work schedules to that. We can link our exercises and diet. And it's such a great way to harness just all of the powers that we have, Like you said, it's not just the masculine ones of like getting the stuff done. We've like all these superpowers, which is why it's so incredible I find working with women, and I'm so curious to hear more. What pulled you to start working with women, and then specifically in relationships?
That's a good question. I would say specifically in relationships because first of all, working with women in relationships always, and that's so beautiful, always goes back to them, creating and finding the peace within themselves and finding the self-love and respect they deserve. So when I work from that approach, the beauty of it that is that you automatically get to work with an individual on self-love, and you get to work on self-love, and you get to work on finding what's blocking them, and how that translates into their relationships. So I think one of the main motivations for me to start working with women is seeing how often they have been mistreated, and they come to me and they suffer and they say, "Ah, I think I can't figure out how to find the right one, and I can't figure out how I can, create a healthy relationship." And I myself had to learn so deeply how to create healthy relationships within my life. And um, I didn't always have the opportunity when I was younger to have someone to learn or model me what a healthy relationship looks like. So that caused me to really dive deeper into attachment styles and psychology as well. So from being on a teenager, really was interested how attachment works, how I was always interested how attachment works and how the dynamic of having parents that are divorced or non-divorced really affects your attachment style and how you react in romantic relationships. So I think that was one of the biggest thing that interested me, seeing the dynamics and how I can help other women to really understand how they all have the ability to create healthy relationships, and that it really starts within ourselves. And almost all my theses were themed around attachment theory and the differences of how we're being loved and how we learned love and how we learn to receive love influence our romantic relationships. And if we don't sit down and see their conscious and subconscious patterns, they will run our life. You will be that they dictate your romantic life. And that can also happen when you have early on in your first relationships that have impacted you heavily, and it makes you feel, for example, jealous because you've been cheated on, or insecure because someone who you really loved left you. So just seeing how old romantic patterns influence you. And I love working on deconstructing them, understanding what's going on, and helping them to have, better life quality, having better relationships with themselves and with others. So I think it's one of the most interesting things on this beautiful planet.
Yeah, totally. I love getting to know like underneath the message underneath it. I have a Scorpio in my chart, and that's very much like investigator. Like I want to know like the meaning behind it and like those deep, rich conversations. So I love speaking to you because I like how you do that with a lot of concepts. Like you find what's really underneath all of it, and that's such a also find with relationships is that people think, okay, like how can I attract in this new partner? And it's like it's you. It starts with your own vibration. So
Mhm.
I really adore that concept. And I like that you brought up attachment theory. I think that this is circulating like a lot in the community, and everyone wants to know their attachment styles. So I don't know if you could just briefly give us kind of an example of these different type of attachment styles for our audience so they can understand.
Absolutely. I love that. I didn't know that was circulating, but it's so good that it is, because knowing your attachment style is so important when you're trying to create healthy relationships. So to make it really brief, because this is such an expansive topic that we might have to record another episode on if we do deep dive in that. But there are 4 different types of attachment styles. So you can be securely attached, you can be anxiously attached, you can be avoidant, and you can be disorganized. So if you're securely attached, you always feel very good about your interactions with your romantic partner, or as a child with your caregiver, meaning when you were a child, it was reliable for you. The relationship with your caregivers was reliable. You knew they would come back. You knew whatever comes up, like they're there for you, but it's also safe for you to explore the world because no matter what, they got your back,
Yeah.
right? So if you had someone who took care of you in that way when you grew up, you are most likely going to develop a secure attachment style. When you have an anxious attachment style, you weren't really sure if your love was reliable, if that makes sense. And same for anxious and avoidant, right? You weren't sure if love was reliable. It was either a caregiver that held on too much and didn't let you make your own decisions, which, by the way, is in a lot of women very common because we don't trust ourselves with making our decisions, which goes back to asking yourself who on the way when I grew up made me feel like I can't make my own decisions. So it takes away this piece of autonomy that we need so deeply when we grow up. Um, so love was not as reliable. And you weren't sure if you had to hold on to that, right? Because if you'd go out and venture out, you weren't sure if they're going to be there. So you would hold on to it, cling to it, because you weren't sure how reliable that love is for you that you received. And same for when you develop an avoidant attachment style is instead of clinging to something because love was not reliable, you learn to be hyper autonomous. You learn to be very self-reliant because you notice it wasn't reliable to you, so you wouldn't try to seek it. You would rather try to self-regulate, which at that stage in your life, you probably don't have the skill to self-regulate those big emotions that are coming up. So you tend to just withdraw and not get attached because you know your needs are not going to be met.
Mm.
And disorganized is also a mix of avoidant and anxious and a little bit more of a severe form of like feeling you don't know how to really evaluate if someone is going to be close or distant or violate your boundaries. So this really mixture of all sometimes being too close and then pulling away and then like being very confused on what attachment actually really is. So those are the different attachment styles, and I see it a lot that it's very common, and interestingly enough it's very common in women to be more anxious in
Yeah.
their attachment style, but I also know quite a few again that are avoidant, and that included me as well. I used to be very avoidant in my attachment style when I was growing up. And men tend to be more avoidant, but also, happen to be anxious. But that creates often this push-pull dynamic that we see in relationships where one goes and goes and goes and tries to get more love and more, right, and pushes, and the avoidant part pulls away because they're like, "Ooh, like I don't know how to handle love and affection, so I withdraw." So that often creates these two attachment styles often create this push-pull dynamic. So it's good to know what's going on and what attachment style you have. And the super awesome thing about it is I've had many clients I worked through an anxious or avoidant attachment style, and worked towards having a secure attachment style. So it's absolutely possible to transform your attachment style. And I did it myself too, through help and work and education. So it's absolutely possible to change your attachment style. And the more you are aware of what's going on and what's dominant, again, you don't have to, as you said, there's probably quizzes and things that help you identify what you are. But you don't necessarily have to say, oh, I'm only that, I'm only that. You absolutely can be a mixture. You can also be mostly secure and then have some, anxious action and also have some anxious elements that are coming up for you. So yeah, I think it's a super interesting topic. It helps you so much to see why you're reacting a certain way in relationships. And once you kind of can pinpoint what's coming up and also be vulnerable with that with your partner, you can create a way more intimate relationship.
Yeah, wow, I love that so much. So, the avoidance style actually is what I resonate most with as well. And I think that there definitely is a part of my community that will resonate with that because they're used to being that hyper vigilant and kind of the codependency in the sense of, okay, I'm just going to take everything on myself. in the way that they were shown. So I think that's going to resonate a lot with the audience. And I'm curious, what are some of your techniques or practices for bringing awareness to these different styles that we have and kind of changing the pattern and reprogramming?
Oh, so many. As I said, I love that work. I'm so passionate about it. But to give you one of my like quickest and most simple tools I give my clients that I work with is creating something called a CBT, like cognitive behavior therapy thought diary. And what you want to do is create, essentially what you're doing is you're creating self-awareness, right? Because the problem is we have so many thoughts and emotions that we over-identify with.
Mm.
If we're not self-aware, we just, go about our day thinking, I am sad, or I am happy, right? It goes positive and negative, yin and yang. Or I'm feeling sad that this happened, or I'm anxious because I didn't get the promotion, whatever it is. I'm just trying to give as many examples as possible. Um, you are not your thoughts and your emotions. So the more you create self-awareness of what these anxious or avoidant thoughts are that are coming up through recording them, it helps you to pinpoint them. So what you want to do is, and I do this on my notes, you can also do that if you like it on a Word document, but I love just using the app note, I just love using the notes app on my iPhone, where you can just write down, you have an anxious thought, right? And that's what's coming up. Let's say your partner is gone on a trip and he's going to the movies at night, and you haven't heard from them in 4 hours, and you thought the movie was 2 hours. And then that sneaky little thought comes in, I'm sure they met someone, or I'm sure they're just, hanging out with someone else. So that would be your anxious thought. And then I want you to just create a pattern, saying like, oh, I always have these thoughts when they're doing something by themselves, or I always have these thoughts when they're on a trip, or, I don't feel loved. So creating an anxious thought. And then also what I want you to do is finding disconfirming evidence. Right. So again, this is something that takes a little more time. I explain it normally in an hour how to do the sheet. And I'm more than happy, as I said, to maybe us go in detail with a couple other things another time. But what you want to do is create disconfirming evidence,
Mm.
right? Which means what could be something that speaks against my anxious thought that I'm having. So, and that could be, we've been together since 4 years and we communicate every day, right? They're probably having, like they went to the movies and went to dinner afterwards, and they're having a good time and being present. So he doesn't have his phone, right? So whatever would make sense for you, um, that maybe is disconfirming evidence for your anxious thought, right? And it really depends. If you are not on that level of seeing, oh, I might be in an unhealthy relationship with someone who might be not treating me well, then that's a whole nother thing. Then you also want to see like, okay, maybe there's a lot of incidences that don't make sense, and then you want to reevaluate that. And I really recommend also working with someone, right? Working with, it could be a therapist, it could be a coach, it could be someone who really goes into depth with that and helps you to identify what kind of patterns are coming up. But just starting with self-awareness, what's the anxious thought and what could be disconfirming evidence for the thought that's coming up?
Oh, that's so great. It really, what I'm hearing is like detaching yourself from it, like not using the I statements, and then reflecting on, okay, I'm not this thing. Let me look at the patterns here and like investigate. Are there other ways to prove that this is not true in other ways? And that it kind of reminds me of like Katie Byron's work of like the limiting beliefs and
I
like
love, yeah, Byron Katie.
Byron Katie.
Katie, sorry, we mixed up there. I mixed up.
And yeah, it's incredible to see that and how that can really work together. I'm curious because we're talking about now like, okay, this event happens and that's how I'm reacting to it. But what happens like when we're in the relationship and we're getting too much in our heads? And for example, like an inner critic and just blaming ourselves and being like, oh, I should have done this better, and oh no, like kind of really worried about what that other person and how they're going to respond, and just being more blaming internally rather than externally. How do you see that showing up in relationships?
The inner critic coming in the relationship.
Oh,
I
sorry.
think we froze for a second. Oh, there you are. Sorry. I think the last 10 seconds of your questions, the last 10 seconds of your question was faded. Can we repeat that question?
Yeah, for sure. Okay,
Yeah,
so how can you build a relationship with the inner critic voice? So yes, this can happen like on a personal level of, when we're trying to create more self-love for ourselves, it's like, the inner critic voice gets in the way. But I feel like this can show up in relationships too. Do you see that happening?
absolutely. And building a relationship with your inner critic is so important for the relationship with yourself and the relationship with anybody else. And I think what's really good, as you said, I love, by the way, that you already separated the inner critic as something that is not part of you, or is you. So the most important thing is to not over identify with your inner critic. You are not your inner critic. You have an inner critic. It's interesting because you hear that voice, right? It's not like you see this is me, but you hear this voice saying that. And I love, me personally, I call it lovingly bullshit FM. I have a name for my inner critic, was like, oh, I try to really, and this is, I think, the most important thing when you're trying to learn and handle your inner critic, is I don't judge it. I don't see it as something negative. I don't go like, oh, like this is happening again and I hate it and it's negative, right? That, because again, like those emotions are energy in motion in your body that are creating a certain frequency, create a certain thought. So you want to learn to be more kind to yourself when the inner critic comes up. So I love approaching it with curiosity. So when it comes up and I have limiting beliefs, I get like, interesting. Let's get curious. Like, why are you trying to avoid going to that appointment, right? Like, what is it that you're afraid of? What do you think it is that we can't do, right? Let's say it'll be a dance audition. I am absolutely not a dancer, but this is an example that came up for one of my clients. Going to a dance audition, and I said, let's see what's coming up for you, just in your inner critic, but completely neutral. Get curious. Say, well, you're not able to do it. You probably won't be able to get on the top five, and then you'll be sad and disappointed that you even put in the effort, and then and then we get curious why it is that she believes she needs to perform well every time, right? The inner critic is trying to protect you from feeling certain feelings, and those are mostly being sad or disappointed or anxious. So if you see that your inner critic is just trying to protect you from something, you can approach it with more love and loving kindness. So saying like, it's okay that you want to protect me, and I see you. Again, validate what's coming up. Validate your inner critic. I see you, I feel you, I hear you. But I still decide to do it. And that's the cool thing. It's not required that your inner critic is shut down for you to take action or do something. You can acknowledge it and say, I love you for trying to keep me safe, but I decide to choose myself and still go for it. Because I know even if I don't get in the top five, I'm loved, I'm cherished, and I still have my power. I don't need to be perfect to be loved. So just building a good relationship with the inner critic will change everything. Just approaching it with curiosity and loving kindness versus I need to get rid of this,
Yes,
right? And that's how you tame it.
totally. And that I think that idea of releasing the inner critic, and maybe it's just a languaging for some people, they think, or that you're getting rid of it, and or like it's bad, so every single time it comes in it's like and sometimes for sure I think there's a time and place to be like, okay, we're not doing this if it's like repattering. But if you haven't really explored and given that voice a chance to have a space because it's there, then it's almost disassociating from your body in a sense too, and you're disconnecting, which I think can also be a trauma response for sure. But I love the
Absolutely.
idea of detaching, and I'm going to make space to hear what this voice has to say and transform the relationship that I have with it.
And as you said, if you are in this process of repattering, what really helps is scheduling worry time. Again, I love that tool. Scheduling worry time. If you just said, okay, I tend to ruminate and it just really interferes with my day and it like stops me from being able to do what I actually want to do, give yourself at least like say, okay, then between 7 p.m. and 8 p.m., I get to have my worry time. In
Mm.
that time, I can listen to myself, tell my inner critic, okay, let's sit down, let's have a conversation, journal it out, whatever comes up, to give it the space, right? But if you just want to be like, oh, never mind, and it doesn't matter, it's like it'll creep up one day and surface. So I think it's good to give yourself a certain scheduled worry time.
I love that practice. One of the posts that I was exploring on your page, it was like a while back, but I really loved it. You were talking about what the actual need was behind each emotion. So, for example, anxiety means wanting safety, shame means wanting acceptance, anger means needing boundaries. And I love this from the psychology perspective because I see this, I very much work with the chakras. And so I kind of see these falling into these categories too. But I'm so curious on how women can have these needs met by partners and building a relationship with these emotions.
Ooh, I love that. Emotional wellness in relationships is such a complex, beautiful topic. So I think it's really important, first of all, to differentiate between what are emotional needs I want to have met by my partner, and what are emotional needs that I want to learn to self-regulate. Because there's a fine line between our partner is there for us unconditionally and we love each other unconditionally. And whatever emotion comes up, I'm there for you. And I think that's beautiful and one of the most important things in relationships. But there's also a difference between I'm not capable of regulating my own emotions at all. So you're supposed to be there for me 24/7, whatever comes up, and find a way to soothe me,
Mm.
right? And that's also in a way I love working with women from an empowered approach, where we also learn to take responsibility for whatever comes up, and that doesn't mean responsibility for someone making us feel bad, but like learning, okay, like I can create awareness and develop the tools to regulate certain emotions for myself too. And that way we can really be in harmony with our partner, because we don't put all the pressure and responsibility on them for like you have to solve this for me and you have to make me feel better, but like hey, like I'm feeling sad and like or this test tomorrow is making me anxious, and like just going into the space of being supported by your partner. I think how you can develop that in a relationship is communicating that with them. And it's interesting because we're all so unique in how we want to be supported. So I let my partner know, for example, when I want to be heard, when I just want to say, hey, I just want you to listen to me and see what's going on. I let him know when I want to have feedback or, like suggestions of what I can do, or because there's a difference between, and I love asking this my partner too, I say, do you want me to just listen to you or do you want me to give you advice? Because sometimes we have certain emotions that are so overwhelming and challenging situations, we don't want a solution, or there is no solution in that moment, but we just want someone to be present with us and listen to us. So I think communicating how you want your emotional needs met by your partner can really change it, because I often see this dynamic in couples where they're like, okay, I don't know how to handle your emotions or what's coming up. And just there's no shame in communicating how you want to be heard and seen and treated. I think sometimes we just assume people have this manual of knowing how we work and how we should react, where it's like people are all so different and so unique. Um, we have different upbringings, we have different traumas, we have different triggers. It's so healthy and so good to communicate with your partner how you want to be treated and what emotional need is there, or when you also need space. Sometimes we need space for certain emotions and, want to sit with it for ourselves. So I think those are pretty important.
Yeah, those are so great. I love the idea of, first you need to get your own needs and wants met, obviously, because you need to know what that actually is and what that feels like in your body. And I love the idea of communicating, like, okay, either I need space here or I need a sounding board rather than giving advice. I That one is like huge for me specifically too, because I love like solution oriented, and it's so
Mhm.
important for that other person to really communicate like what I'm open and available for.
Mhm.
The last couple of questions I want to ask is for my community members who are in relationships, and then one for those who are seeking relationships. So for the ones that who are in relationships, what do you see as a lot of our community members are into the spiritual realm, and let's say one who is in the relationship is maybe not as into spirituality and stuff as them, and then the other person just gets into spirituality and they're so excited about it, they want to share it with their partner who's kind of like I'm not that interested in it, but they're really wanting, ultimately what I think the need is that they want to grow and evolve together. So what are some of your recommendations for how they can evolve their relationship and kind of find a medium and ground place with, as they're exploring their spirituality?
Mhm. Lovely question. I think it's important to see again that you are two individual human beings and you don't necessarily have to have the same interests, the same, like the same level of spirituality in terms of it's okay if you're different in certain aspects, and it's okay if you prefer to dive deeper into spirituality versus the other person. Doesn't mean you can't grow together. What I think is important is to find things that you have in common, right? And really learning to accept really learning to accept your partner for who they are. And that means you can't force someone into spirituality. I think it's lovely and I think it's so fun to bring a couple concepts of spirituality to your partner. And if you see they're not as interested in it as you and you want to grow with them together, and I relate to this feeling so much, honestly. Um, I think finding a few things where you can go one level down and see like, hey, does this resonate with you? It could also be say, hey, how do you feel about having a 5-minute meditation together? Bringing it closer to them and like explaining there's so much spirituality actually that is based on scientific facts. Um, where you can say, hey, like meditating and connecting with your inner self is good for your overall health, is helps you to, be more calm. So try because men, let's say we're in a heterosexual relationship, um, men are often more logical and fact driven. So if you are in that relationship, you might want to bring it closer to them on a factual base, and they will still get the benefit of a spiritual practice. But they base it on a more factual a thing that you brought closer to them. But I think it's really important to ask for consent in terms of, hey, are you open to learning more about this? Are you open to going on this journey together, because it means a lot to me. So communicating that with your partner and seeing where they're at. I don't think, and especially in the field of spirituality, there's no sense in forcing someone into anything if they don't want to grow alongside with you in that field. And if they're completely closed off to it and they don't want to, find something that you love and that you're passionate about that you both can grow with together. Right? They could be open to seeing maybe there are other ways that make us feel as connected as we would feel through connecting through spirituality.
Yeah, and I often find it really is just everyone has their own way of connecting with it, and it really is just like finding their lane with it, and everyone's gonna do it in a different way. Like I remember I had a conversation with my uncle, and it was about his motorcycle driving, and it was one of the most spiritual conversations I've ever had, and I just totally didn't expect that to have that. with talking about that. I'm very immersed in Vedic tradition and yoga and Ayurveda. It's the same concepts though. So if you can kind of distill down to the basic concepts of what it is and the juice of it, there's so many different beautiful ways. And then, you're learning in that process too of like, okay, maybe I can like release my attachment with some of these spiritual tools, and I can actually open up my horizons and find that spirituality is like in the mundane and in just like the regular part of life.
Yeah, and I love what you just said. That's such a good example because spirituality is everywhere, right? It's not only in getting into astrology and, like sitting down and, actively meditating and connecting to certain parts of you. It's everywhere, and that's the beauty of it. Where my favorite example is horseback riding because I've been passionate about horses ever since I was 6 years old, and it's still my biggest passion. I love nothing more than being in nature and connecting with horses, and it's like the best thing ever for me. And I feel so lucky because I got my partner into riding, and we have two horses together, and for me it's like the most beautiful thing ever. And someone wouldn't say probably that's a spiritual practice, but for us, when we're with the horses, we don't look at our phone for hours. We're present. We're laughing. We're feeling good in our body. We're elevating our energy, and we're in touch with nature and the divine. So all of that is happening in that moment. Although it's not necessarily something where I said, "Hey, you want to do something spiritual together?" So I love that example. That just goes so hand in hand.
Oh, horseback riding. I so see that for you because you have to build such a relationship with horses. Like, this is
Yeah.
no, and like being really firm. And that's so incredible. I see that for you. I feel like yeah, pets and animals are so spiritual. They have like this untapped connection of emotions. That's really beautiful that you have that connection with them. My final question is, and this is kind of loaded, so I want to get more specific. So, for let's say my community members who are calling in, like that soulmate energy, like that person they really want to connect with on that deep level, um, where can we begin? And I know there's like probably you have courses and programs all around this, but what's like that little tip of the iceberg?
How to find that connection?
Yes.
Ooh, okay. So that's again so hard to nail into one thing, but let's try it. So first of all, I think you should throw away any guide you see in magazines that say 5 ways to get a guy. Do these 3 things to, like find your soulmate in terms of I think every time you get into this energy of being inauthentic and trying to get something through manipulation, I don't know if it's meant to stay with you. You might be able to, switch it up for a while and get something short term, but I don't know if it helps you to authentically find your soulmate. So I think one of the most important things is being authentically yourself when you're dating and learning how to date intentionally. And that's actually, I have a mastermind that's called Mastery of Love, and we work on dating intentionally so deeply in this framework where you learn what it means for you to be authentic, what it means to date intentionally. So I want you to get really clear on what you want to create in a partner. Right? What are your top 5 non-negotiables? What are top 5 that you can't have in a relationship? What are top 5 that are you're open and flexible to? And hold yourself accountable, to those things when you find someone. And that might sound a little, like, oh, that's masculine energy, but we need both, right? We need nurturing and intuitive and being open and receiving, but also sometimes women have lost this connection of setting boundaries for themselves and people please, and then we like let people violate our boundaries and date someone who is actually blocking us from finding that soulmate connection, right? And seeing what is it you truly want from a soulmate, right? Get clear on that and see in what way you can get your energy and your vibration into that first and embody that. And then it's going to be so much easier to attract that into your life. So yeah, I love that. And I think that's such important work too.
Mm. There's so much good recommendations here and juiciness on this episode. I'm so excited to share it with our community. And I'm really grateful for you and your time and diving deep into all these different topics. If my community members, if you're not already following Jenny, I'll have her Instagram linked below because I've been learning so many great things, and you just have this like soothing and nurturing quality about you that I know our community is going to connect with. Other than Instagram, how else can our community work with you?
So I think I just briefly mentioned the mastermind. So I have two masterminds. One is currently open for enrollment, which is the Mastery of Love Mastermind, where I help women to date securely, heal from the past, and really find that soulmate connection. So it's really designed to create a relationship roadmap to really, like again, embodies that self-love, find the right one and build long-lasting, healthy love instead of a quick fix. And I also offer one-on-one limited spots, but we always open up spots potentially in the beginning and end of the month. So if you want to work with me, you can go on my website, which is jennymeinen.com. So JennyMeinen.com. And I'm always happy to connect with you guys on Instagram. Please feel free, if this resonated with you, to ask me something. We do weekly Ask Me Anythings where you can ask me questions. And so feel free to reach out. I love, love, love helping and connecting with like-minded women. And yeah, I just want to thank you because you have such beautiful energy, Angelica, and this has been such a beautiful episode and time together.
Oh, thank you. I'll be sure to have all that linked in the show notes so our community can find you and work with you. And yeah, thank you again. I just love this conversation, and yeah, I'm excited to have future conversations.
Likewise, we should do this again. Again, I feel like we touched so many interesting topics. I would love to have another deep dive with you.
Ah, incredible. Thank you everyone for tuning in, and I'll see you all next time.